We've done Homelab dial-up. We've done Homelab T1. We've even done Homelab broadband with cable modems over coax. But we haven't done Homelab DSL yet. Today's the day. In this video, I'll get some SpeedStream DSL modems hooked up to a Lucent DSLAM with all the requisite cabling requirements. Actually get a connection working, struggle with a bunch of other DSL modems, and finally, we'll be able to make some analog calls over this DSL line. Check that out. Let's get into it. DSL stands for Digital Subscriber Line. I didn't pull any numbers, but it's definitely in use today. I remember it being very popular in the early 2000s as a replacement to dial-up internet before cable broadband took over, at least in my area. Now, the basic idea is the telecom industry figured out how to combine data traffic and analog voice traffic into a single twisted pair phone line, like the one that was very likely already coming in to your house. This is a DSL modem, and if we look on the back, we can see down in there just two wires, which is of course very convenient because it means much of the required infrastructure for DSL simply already existed. On the client side, you'd have your phone line coming to your house, and you'd use one of these splitters that splits it into the data traffic, and then of course you can plug in your phone on one side, your DSL modem on the other side of the splitter, and you can actually make calls at the same time as you're using the internet, which is pretty amazing when you're coming from dial-up. But today I need to figure out this side of the equation, coming from the telco, so I can become my own DSL internet service provider. The basic setup is going to require something called a Digital Subscriber Line Access Multiplexer, or DSLAM. You'll almost always hear people just call it a DSLAM. On the back of mine, we've got these two Amphenol connectors, which can take a cable carrying 24 different POTS lines, and if I tilt it up a little bit, you can see it says POTS 1 through 24. That's for the voice. And then ADSL 1 through 24. That's the DSL line coming out of this thing. If we flip it around, on the front, it's got some Ethernet ports labeled uplink. This DSLAM is effectively going to combine the network on the front with the POTS lines coming in on the back here into our DSL lines with data and voice coming out of this connector. Side note, you may have noticed the splitters actually say ADSL, and the DSLAM does as well over there. ADSL stands for Asynchronous Digital Subscriber Line, asynchronous DSL, and it's called asynchronous simply because the download and upload speeds can be different, with the download speed, of course, typically being higher. Or maybe always, I don't know. When someone is talking about DSL, they're almost always talking about ADSL or maybe VDSL, a faster variant that came later. Everyone just kind of lumps it under the DSL name though. We're talking about ADSL today. I think early DSL that we're dealing with here would have been advertised as 8 megabits per second down, or 1 megabyte per second down, and about 1.3-ish megabits per second upload. Tons of factors would have caused variation in these speeds though, which version of ADSL the equipment is supporting, how far you are away physically from the DSLAM, and so on. I would assume you typically got less than that. It'll be interesting to see what kind of speeds we get with this setup. So let's walk through this gear here, come up with a plan, and get to work. Let's start on the client side of things, and by client I mean, you in your home, you've subscribed to DSL service from an internet provider, and we'll start here because it's going to get progressively more complex as we go upstream. So I already described the splitters. They take the DSL line coming in, split it into the data that the modems want, and of course you can plug in a phone outside the other splitter. I've also got a few of these DSL modems. These are SpeedStream DSL modems. These two are identical, and this one is a slightly older model, I guess. Let's look at the back of this one. These were sent in by a viewer named Mike quite a while ago, so a huge thanks to him for making this video possible. And it looks like we have some modem configuration UI that we'll want to check out, or I want to check out anyway. Modem access code, that might be something we need to configure up on the DSLAM. No idea, I'm learning as I go. This is a SpeedStream 5100 Ethernet ADSL modem from Efficient Networks. And the other one is identical. It is worth noting that there are reset buttons to factory reset these things, which is nice, and both of mine have been factory reset previously. And then we got this small little guy that used to cost $8 apparently, another SpeedStream, and this one is a SpeedStream 4100 from Siemens. So I don't know if Efficient Networks took over from Siemens. No idea. And this one's sort of interesting because the reset button has not been used. You would have had to puncture that guy. I don't know if they work other than they do turn on. Let's plug one in. Guess we'll just plug this one in. I plugged in all of them. They all light up. Power button on the back. And that blinks for a little bit, and then eventually you get a complaint, of course, that the DSL isn't working. So hopefully we can do something about that today. Then we get to the DSLAM. I have a Lucent Technologies DSLAM, the Bell Labs innovation right there. I'm lucky enough to have mine complete in box. It's almost so clean and fresh looking that it kind of strikes me as new old stock. This was sent to me for the cost of shipping by 2FX in the serial port Discord. I think it was 40 bucks, which is a screaming deal to me. So of course a massive thanks to them, because it definitely wouldn't be possible to do this video without one of these. You get access to the serial port Discord in my $5 and up Patreon tier, by the way. We've got some light indicators for all 24 ADSL lines. That'll probably be useful later. We've got the 2 uplink ports, so that would go to a network. In my case, it's going to go to the retro rack network. Maybe we'll go on the internet today, I'm not sure. And then it's got some interesting ports called subtending. In my very brief research, I think you can like link multiple DSLAMs together. And that's what you'd use these ports for. And then we've got a console port. This is serial. I think this is actually 10100 Ethernet for a web interface. We'll probably take a look at the serial port first. Then on the back, we've got the 24 POTS lines coming in. This thing does its job and turns them into the ADSL lines, 24 total possible, coming out over here. It's using these Amphenol style connectors. I have one of these cables. It's a Cat3 cable. There are 24 pairs in these cables, so it's a pretty compact way to move 24 phone lines around, or DSL lines as well. And I have a problem. I only have one of these, and usually I use it with this convenient breakout box, so I can plug this in and break out all 24 phone lines, right? So one thing I could do is just cut this in half, but I don't really want to do that. I want to use this cable because the other end typically plugs into a Cisco router where I have a dial-up setup going. I haven't actually incorporated that into the retro rack yet. We might use that router for our POTS lines today, I'm not sure. And one of these isn't good enough anyway, because I need 2. I need one for our DSL, I need one for the POTS. Through the magic of slowly killing the Earth, Amazon claims they're going to deliver one to me today. I ordered it this morning, and I'm going to cut that one in half. I've got everything we need to splice the wires once one of those cables is cut, and crimp new connectors on the end and all that. I would like to preserve one of the cables, but if the other one doesn't show up today, I'll cut the one I have in half. You know? That's showbiz, baby. So that's the DSLAM, but of course we will need the POTS lines to like make some phone calls and stuff. In a previous video, I set up a router that can do Cisco IP phones and analog phones. I was using some Merlin phones in that video. Some of those analog lines do come into this room, so I could plug those in here. Maybe we'll use that other router I was showing a picture of earlier. I'm not really sure, but we will have to generate some POTS lines. I have a couple options, so we'll explore that if I can get to the point where I understand what this DSLAM's doing. The first thing we're going to do is get this thing plugged in and see if we can't talk with its console port, manage it. I have zero idea what type of configuration I'm going to need to do on this. For example, I imagine I'm going to have to register these modems somehow. I have no clue. So that's what we're going to attempt to figure out first. Let's plug this thing in. Before I power this on, I guess I'll show you exactly what it is. The model is ADSL IP DSLAM, IP being a very important part of the puzzle for me. More on that in a minute. And the serial number is interesting. I cannot remember where I read this, but I'm pretty sure this WE is either an homage or proof of the history lineage here to Western Electric. Western Electric, of course, being the manufacturing arm of AT&T until 1996. I think Lucent was part of that divestiture, so it's kind of cool to see that WE in there in the serial number. Now, it has IP in the name because it's just Ethernet I can plug into here. Pretty sure. We'll see, I guess. It's very typical for these DSLAMs to use something called ATM, or asynchronous transfer mode. Remember, we're talking about the telecom industry. I have a bunch of ATM gear, and the reason I actually picked that stuff up is because I thought I was going to need it eventually for DSL, because it's very common to need that. And in my case, I got this IP one, just kind of sheer luck there. which is great because I'm much more familiar with the Ethernet world. I have ATM gear. I think I could make an ATM DSLAM work, but despite having made a video about ATM and even getting it working, it's still quite a mystery to me. I mean, I understand the high-level concepts, but the hands-on keyboard actually configuring, getting something done with it, still a total novice. So pretty cool to have this IP unit. Let's plug it in. The DSLAM is up. Indicator light says okay. It's definitely not silent. It's got some fans inside whirring away. Got the console port hooked up here to my console, serial to USB adapter. And then over here in PuTTY, press enter. Needs a login. 2FX told me it's been factory reset to admin, or maybe they set it to that, I'm not sure. Let's see, and I'm in. Let's do a question mark. I don't know what to do with any of this information. We've got Ethernet interface configuration, IP, show. Let's show IP. I suspect, based on some screenshots I've seen, it's going to be easier to deal with this thing over its GUI for someone like me who doesn't know how to do this. So show IP question mark. Okay, show IP interface. So I'm assuming this is the console port interface. Let's go get a laptop or something hooked up to this network, and then let's poke around. Got a Windows 7 laptop out on the same network. This guy's in the mix, just because we can. I was able to log in, no problem, and I've been kind of poking around. We've got this line profiles configuration, which I imagine you can decide the speed of things, because I'm seeing this downstream 8160 kilobits a second, so that's definitely our 8 megabits. And then over in Node, we've got ADSL port configuration, and you can assign a profile to each port. I don't know what any of these are. We're going to leave security off, just because. And I guess what we're going to do, I've got this cable going into just the DSL side, so there's no voice or anything. Put the splitter in anyway. I don't know how necessary that is in this setup. ADSL coming out. We're just going to plug in one of these modems and see if we can't get some promising activity from the lights. And I stole the power adapter from this for this, so we'll unplug that. Okay. Let's see what happens. The DSL light's going green already. No way. Well, that's good. Okay. So now I'm going to figure out how to configure one of these uplink ports, I guess. I'm going to poke around this UI a little bit. I'll be back after I find another power adapter, because I need this to be on. So in the last 40 seconds, ridiculous progress. I told this computer to start obtaining an IP address automatically. Okay. I powered up the retro rack. That's a 10.0.0.0 network. I plugged the DSLAM uplink port 1 into the retro rack network. I made no other configuration changes. It's literally a factory reset unit, I think. I plugged the laptop into the DSL modem. It's just working. So the DSL modem knows that it sees an upstream connection, so it thinks it has internet, even though there's no internet in the retro rack. Ethernet just plugs in right when a machine is plugged in. That's totally expected. Yeah, check this out. Well, it kind of works. Do an IP config. That DSL router is putting me on this 192.168.1 network. It's got this default gateway of that, which I think, well, I don't really know, to be honest. It's also giving me an IPv6 address. That's kind of cool. And then I can't get to the outside world, though. That doesn't work. So what I'm going to do is probably go read about network theory. This default gateway is the DSL modem. Let's go look at its UI. Complexity might be escalating on us here, folks. This is already configured with some existing guy at att.net and a password. Modem access code that is on the bottom of the modem. That's good. It is that. We might have to factory reset this bad boy. Didn't work. Wants me to contact my service provider's help desk, which is this one right here. The manual said you hold this reset button for more than 4 seconds. It is doing nothing. It says the power LED should blink red and green. think maybe they locked these down somehow. The service provider. It didn't work. Well, I let go and now it's doing it. Okay, manual's wrong. Let that thing do its little boot up sequence, see what happens. The factory reset worked. The pre-populated values aren't there anymore, but I'm pretty sure I'm gonna have to get on the DSLAM or somewhere, somehow, and assign a user and password to this perhaps. I'm not entirely sure. We're kind of bumping up against anything I know. So I'm looking at connection information. It's not being assigned an IP. There is no user ID configured. It does know it's connected to the DSLAM at 8 megabits and a little less than 1 megabit for upstream. Okay, I'm gonna go read the documentation on the DSLAM. Here's something weird. I put this thing back in the hub to talk to the DSLAM directly. I really should get another computer. And I was trying to ping the DSLAM, and I was getting these complaints from 10001, the retro rack router, which this is no longer plugged into. Why would that happen? Ah, it's because when I plug the computer into this, which is on the 10000 network, somehow this is acting as a switch or something, because it's able to reach out and get an IP from the retro rack network. Okay. All right, I've been messing around for a few hours. Let me explain my naive understanding of how this was going to work. I wanted like a bridge type setup. So like I've got the 100 network over there and the retro rack. That's the internet. That's my WAN. And I wanted that router to assign an IP to a device connected to a modem. I can't figure out how to get that to work yet. You'll see there's another challenger in the room over here. A 3Com Office Connect Remote 812 ADSL Router. Guess what? It doesn't know how to route. So I didn't think it was going to be easy, but with these DSL modems, I was really hoping I'd be able to put them in something called bridge mode to just be like, hey, whatever this thing tells you, it's upstream connection, take its IP, you're on the network, because I'm in a Homelab scenario. I don't need username and password. You can use PPP, PPPoE, and a bunch of stuff that I don't really want to get into in this particular video, but I might have to. And these are consumer devices, that would be sent to you by your service provider. And of course, that would be the expectation. So I thought maybe use some enterprise gear. I picked up that 3Com unit complete in box on eBay, and it turned out the box wasn't so useful. It was totally factory reset because I don't think it had ever been used. But man, I went through this setup wizard. I wish I had filmed it. I told it to do DHCP, assign IPs to devices on its 4 ports on the back, and it just doesn't work. Let me see if I can even get back in here. So I'm going to do show. I'm so spoiled. Not spoiled. That's the wrong word. I'm biased by learning a bunch of network stuff on Cisco gear. I mean, yeah, they copied it from whoever or whatever, it doesn't matter, but I'm just used to that. So I'm going to do list interfaces. We got ETH:1. So I'm going to do show interface ETH:1. It's complaining again that I have to do show interface ETH:1 settings. Everything is in caps in the instructions for some reason. And yeah, this is not useful at all. Show DHCP server settings. Nothing. So it's enabled and the start IP address is garbage. I put all this into the startup wizard because I didn't want to dive in and learn about the 3Com whatever, and nothing. And I still don't want to learn about the 3Com whatever. I like this feature. You can just backspace past the prompt. Get rid of it. Very nice. Basically, what I need is a modem I can control. And I have not been able to figure out how to control these modems without setting up a, in my opinion, for me personally, relatively complex authentication scheme. Probably not actually that hard, but it wasn't supposed to be the point of this video. We'll do future videos on that, how an ISP would actually set it up. So we're gonna get rid of this 3Com crap and just, throw more 3Com crap on the pile for posterity. This thing has been on for about 5 hours-ish. And man, it is pretty warm to the touch. These guys also You leave these guys on for like 10 minutes, they get warm. So yeah, I don't know. And it's not like this thing's been doing a lot. Won't be Noxua fan modding this thing. I know it sounds like I'm throwing a lot of 3Com shade here, but it was co-founded by Bob Metcalf, one of the co-inventors of Ethernet, which I love. And yeah, I'm just not familiar with the 3Com stuff. But I do have this complete in-box 3Com Home Connect ADSL Modem PCI. So we are going to unbox this bad boy together. I have to imagine it's like a early 2000s unit. Don't want to mess up this box. It's in really good shape. I think I got this on eBay. The thinking here, remember, is that I can set this particular modem in a configuration that will get along with my default DSLAM. And again, always remember, I don't know what I'm doing. So we got a phone cord made in Malaysia. We got probably, place your bets. I'm guessing it is a splitter that just pulls out ADSL. We'll read the documentation in a second. And of course we've got a very nice 3Com Home Connect Quick Start Guide and CD-ROM. And then I'm definitely going to put this in a Windows XP machine. It says Windows 95 and 98 users wait. Do not install this modem until after you run the connections CD-ROM. I'm not going to do any of that. I'm just going to throw it in my Windows XP. It's actually kind of a shame. At least we're recording killing that sticker. And there she is. The 3Com ADSL PCI modem. I'm just taking a look at it. It looks, you know, good. Nothing wrong with it that I can tell. Not that I would be able to tell. My experience with 3Com tells me that one of these is going to blow up. We blew up all sorts of stuff. This cap went, that one went, really toasty. Sorry. Enough with the 3Com trash talk. We're going to throw it in Old Faithful here. We got an IBM Think Center with a Pentium 4 inside running Windows XP. I was obviously really wrong with my prediction that it was from the early 2000s because it had a Windows 95 warning, so it's from the mid-90s. I was 6 or 7 years old. I have successfully dialed up with this machine, Ethernet, of course, over a normal LAN, and then this 4 systems ATM card. Got the ATM connection on this. So we might as well put the DSL card in this thing and just, you know, put it on all sorts of internets. This thing is like the perfect generation for just dicking around because it's got SATA ports. It's running this SSD, the old Blixem, only the best. She just kind of, I just unplugged it. It just kind of floats around in there. Let's find a PCI port. I'm trying to remember where that was. I think it was like right here. This SATA port. She won't care. Windows XP doesn't care. Slide that out. What other channel are you going to see some guy putting a 3Com DSL ADSL card into some PCI port of his IBM Think Center, and it doesn't. Why doesn't it fit? Something's wrong. The cord's in the way. Anyway, the point is, don't forget to like and subscribe. That's a tight slot. I wish I was joking. It was actually really hard to get in there. So the one problem is this thing doesn't actually take screws for any of the PCI cards. So I've got the ATM and the modem and now our new ADSL. And I think there was like I have it somewhere, there's like a plastic piece that covers this. It's broken, doesn't work. So, you know, we just let them flop around. Everything's fine. The Pentium 4 heatsink in all its glory. It does have a fan, can't quite tell right there. And then all these caps are pretty notorious for just kind of going on you. And my Think Center, for some reason, hasn't had that problem. So we're just going to run her till she blows up. Look at that. ADSL, dial-up, ATM, Nothing really fits really well because the little plastic piece that's supposed to hold everything in is long gone. That's fine. I have great news. Amazon told the truth. Showed up today. But now that I'm looking at it, it sort of seems like, I mean, it's brand new, but it seems like a higher quality cable than the one I have. It is longer though. So, but like I said before, that's showbiz, baby. So now I'm the proud owner of 3 of these cables, sort of. And right in there, we can see all the individual wires that I will be able to pull back and strip and put connectors on. But none of that is actually meaningful right now because I can't get the data side of the equation working. I'm more than confident I can get the voice side working. And worst case scenario, I'll just plug in some phones to some other routers I've hooked up and make myself feel better. So there's a couple trees I could bark up. We got upstream, DSLAM config, some PPPoE, authentication, all that stuff. We might have to do that yet. I'm barking up the I just need to configure the modem route. That's why we're putting this brand new modem in this computer over here that we just did. So we won't even need the voice stuff yet, but we do have everything we need. And man, these cables are surprisingly nice. I'm excited about that. All right, let's power this IBM Think Center with Windows XP up. And when that inevitably doesn't work, we'll put this thing in a Windows 98 or a Windows 95 machine. No big deal. It's the next day. I went to bed last night without powering this on yet, so we haven't tried that. And I started thinking, let's give the SpeedStream modems another shot. I was kind of thinking, I did not dig around in this interface very deep. When I have this habit of planting a preconceived notion in my mind. When I saw the initial login, I was thinking, oh, this thing's locked down. Still didn't know how to log in after I factory reset it. That thing actually didn't have anything to do with authenticating to the modem and being able to change its configuration settings. That was for PPP, point-to-point protocol that allows you to authorize with the upstream equipment and be allowed to use the internet. Remember, I'm trying to just bypass all that. So I started digging around, and sure enough, there's a PPP location. Mine was obviously on PPP on the modem. So this would be, you would need a valid username and password, like the one we saw that this modem was actually using back in the day with AT&T, to actually get on the internet. I was talking about this bridging stuff, and so yeah, you can put it in bridge mode, the thing resets itself, and then you can see over here pretty much instantly. I think I did an IP config release and then renew. That forces the machine to go try to find a DHCP server. And sure enough, I got assigned a retro rack IP we can ping to the outside world. That is the router responding to it. As always, these things are anticlimactic when they finally start working. This is a DSL connection, a Homelab DSL connection running through the DSLAM to the retro rack equipment. If that retro rack was on the internet, which we will do someday in future videos with some PIX firewalls, we could get online with this thing. I think we're still going to pursue the XP box just to see if that 3COM modem works. I suspect I can put it in bridge mode. Don't really know if it's going to work with Windows XP since it was clearly designed for 9598 and NT 4.0, but typically XP is pretty forgiving with drivers. Let me make some room. Let's power this up because I want to do a speed test between 2 DSL links. I've got 2 splitters. So we should be able to do that with this DSLAM. Let's do that now. Got everything plugged in, another splitter, and the cable that came with the modem. That's kind of cool. And then Windows, of course, isn't going to know what to do with this thing. So let's pop in this guy. I think it said I was actually supposed to do this first, but we'll see what happens. Actually, it says it found an ATM network controller. That's either the card that's already in there, which I think was already installed, or the new card. It would probably technically show up as that. I think we're going to want to launch these drivers anyway. A disk drive might be broken. Yeah, okay. Setup. Why doesn't it work? I had to manually tell it to update the driver for that PCI device, and yeah, I don't know. Would have been nice to see the WinNT ones. We'll give it a shot. Cannot install. Dang. So you know the drill. I downloaded what claimed to be the XP drivers for this thing from some sketchy website. My PC does not meet the minimum requirements of a Pentium processor. That's fine. I'm going to be shocked if this works. Basically, we're going to reboot the computer. The value specified for hardware ID does not match any device on the system. Are we surprised? Looks like it would have been pretty sweet, though. We're going to throw it in this Windows 95 machine, and the only PCI slot this will fit in, because the card is so long, still has it bumping up against the heatsink in here. So I got some tape on there to hopefully avoid catastrophe. If this doesn't work, we're moving on. I keep forgetting to plug the monitor in. So there we go. It's booting up. We're going to do it the way the instructions said. Install the drivers first, and then I'll put the card in. So far, so good. It liked the auto run this time. It's getting installed. Wouldn't it be funny if this thing couldn't even do a bridge mode? I'm pretty sure the DSLAM is doing ATM stuff down to the modem. We're just getting it abstracted away by the DSLAM on the upside. Let's try this one. I have to upgrade my dial-up networking and then restart the installer. Oh my god. All right, we're 3 restarts in, and this one didn't work. It's supposed to be restarting. Classic. What's this gonna do? Come on. Beautiful. Driver's installed. Card is installed. Booting up for the first time with the card in there. See what happens. This is good. It sees it. Trying to update it. Uh-oh. Okay. Oh, come on. I have a bunch of network cards in here because of the token ring stuff. Might have to turn that off. Oh, geez. We'll see what happens. That's right. You guessed it. One more restart. Like 5 or 6 now? I think I made a very bad mistake not choosing ATM. And chose whatever that Ethernet option was. And it doesn't let you change it in this control center thing. You would think that would have been like the whole point. Man, I might have to do it over again? Now the computer froze. I uninstalled everything, did that whole process over again, and it never asked me that question about my connection type ever again. It's probably off in some godforsaken registry key, even though I uninstalled everything. Sorry, I'm throwing in the towel on this one. We'll revisit it in future DSL videos when I've got the OS setup going and this computer kind of makes the room smell. Oh, we're done. Let's get some phones working. This is me in the future wrapping up this video, and I realized I forgot to see what this thing is. It's the Excelsis Swapper, which sounds like a gun in a video game or something. And you're not gonna believe this. Phone lines can come to the house with 4 wires, right? And a pair can be on the inner 2 or the outer 2, or I suppose any combination. I'm not sure what standard. And here is the smoking gun. Your 3Com Home Connect ADSL Modem PCI card expects to see the ADSL signal on the outer wire pair, which is not what my setup does. Remember earlier when we were looking at the inner pair on the DSL modem? This is an inner pair setup. So yeah, that computer's already put away, but maybe if I had just put the Excelsis Swapper in line, it might have started working, or at least attempted to form a link. 3Com. First, we need a way to hook up the POTS lines to the DSLAM with this Amphenol connector. So one of those cables I cut, I'll splice in. I'm relatively certain the color combinations are standard, so I'll go look that up, and I'll crimp a jack on the end of line 1. Supposedly, pin 1 is white and blue. So let's get these. This is a pass-through connector. I know I'm a cheater. It's just easier. And then, so we can get this crimped. We will see. Just checking I got them in the middle there. Got the connector on, and our new pair is going right into that jack, which goes to the retro rack. Now I gotta explain that. This Cisco 2800 series router is hosting some telephony services. So I can use Cisco IP phones, just like this one here right off to my left on the network. But also on the back, it's got a FXS card in it. And that wire you see coming out is the one we just plugged into in the other room. That's gonna give us dial tone, and let us dial into this thing and interact with IP phones over our analog phone that is gonna flow through the DSLAM. So again, the POTS line coming out of that router actually ends up here. We just plugged into it with line 1 of our connector. You can't really tell, but it's going into the POTS section here, that connector. And then over here, we're plugged into the phone jack of the splitter, with a phone of course, And this is kind of interesting. This is off right now. It's not too loud, but it was driving me nuts sitting in here with it, messing with that Windows 95 machine, so I turned it off. And this isn't too surprising, but interesting. It just passes the analog phone call through. We have a dial tone. So that is what's coming out of our router. That's a POTS line, and the DSLAM just passively lets it on through, which is kind of cool. So you power up the DSLAM and then it starts doing its DSL stuff. But we are going to need another phone to call, so plugged in an IP phone, it's booting up, and we should be able to, while online, call between the one going through the DSLAM on our DSL connection and an outside phone, vice versa. The DSLAM and this phone are up, and of course we can pick up the phone and start a ping, way better than dial-up already. You should be able to dial 102. Check that out. So now we have a call going over the DSL line. It won't be DSL's fault if we can't go the other way, but let's try it out. That is number 200, is that line. Yeah. All right. A fully functional Homelab DSL setup with analog phone service. One last thing to do, let's do a really simple iPerf test on this thing to see what kind of speeds it's roughly actually getting, since we didn't get to hook up the other machine. Okay, I've got an iPerf server. iPerf is just a tool that tests connection speed and latency and stuff. It is running on another machine on the network in server mode, this 10.00.106 machine. We're going to start this one up as a client and see what kind of speeds we can get. Ooh, look at that. Not good. 1 megabit per second. Nothing even close to 8 megabits. So yeah, we can't test upload, but it'll obviously be worse. We're getting like 700 kilobits per second. That's pretty interesting. There could be a multitude of factors. More settings on the DSLAM, the modem, something wrong with the equipment upstream. Maybe we're getting a lot of interference or something on wire. I'm not sure. It's interesting to see that though, 700 kilobits per second. I would have killed for that in the early 2000s, by the way. That wasn't too bad, although, of course, we don't have PPP working, so I can't actually authorize and set this up the way a real ISP would have back in the day, so we'll explore that in a future video. You might be wondering, like, why did I even do any of this? Well, I don't really know. I don't have any nostalgia for DSL. I, of course, had dial-up. I don't need to talk about that. A lot of us remember dial-up. Plenty of nostalgic waxings about that on the internet. T1 was always this, like, mythical connection speed in the 90s to some of us that seemed like this unattainable level of speed. And I never actually had DSL. My house went straight from dial-up to cable modems, just like this. And everyone in my area was the same, so I think maybe it was unique to my area. I don't remember anyone having DSL. Maybe the random business I happened to know they had DSL, and then maybe I used their internet or something, but no one at their home. So I was curious to see what it was all about, hands on the keyboard, hooking everything up and how it actually worked. And I think I have a much better understanding than when I started this video. But I'm going to stop it here. That 3Com card really took it out of me. Sorry I'm talking all this crap about 3Com. I have no luck with 3Com gear. I have a lot of ATM gear. It would be interesting to get a proper DSLAM that just does ATM and not Ethernet natively, though that made my life way easier. It was one less thing to worry about when I was in this learning mode and trying to figure out how all these pieces fit together. But as always, thank you for watching. Please consider subscribing if you haven't. It really helps the channel grow, and I'll catch you in the next video.